All right, guys, we're looking at the data from Dan's runs. Well, I guess first we are using AIM as a data logger. The ride height data is coming from Izzy laser ride heights, and then we write our own math channels, and that's how we have ride heights at the front left, front right, and rear left. You only need 3 laser ride height sensors to do that. So this is 2 runs with Dan Clark. The blue is no arrow, the orange is with our arrow, and the high efficiency wing. You can see each of the things we're looking at is brake pressure, front left ride height, front right ride height, rear left ride height, rear right ride height, steering angle, and the vehicle speed. And then also the bottom is a reference, and I'll kind of go over what that means in a little bit. First, we'll look at brake pressure. So one thing you can notice is some of the corners he is braking harder, and that is because he's carrying a little bit more speed. And like this location, you can see that it has a higher spike, but he's braking less. And then this is also higher. And then there's some spots where it's lower, probably because he just doesn't have to brake as much because the arrow is allowing that more grip, and he can just carry more speed through the corner. So right here, and right here, you can see that. And then right here, he had to brake with no arrow, but did not have to brake with arrow. And then you can look at in comparison. So if we just go directly down and look at the speed, you can see right here that he's carrying more speed through all of this with the arrow. Like there's a lot of places you can actually see that. And then looking at the steering angle, one thing that we definitely noticed is the steering is a lot smoother with arrow. You can see how bumpy it is in multiple different places, and with the blue, and it's not like that with the orange. The orange is just a lot smoother, and that is with arrow. Now looking at the ride heights, it's a little bit harder to kind of discern what's going on, but just as a broad overview, you can definitely tell the orange lines are averagely lower than the blue lines. Logically, this makes sense because with the arrow, you're adding downforce. The spring rate stayed the same, so because the spring rate stayed the same, with more loading, the car is going to be lower around the track. And you can see that. I'll point out a few locations so you can obviously kind of see, but like here, some places it is higher. That's because other stuff's going on, like here, it's primary example. And then one thing you can do with this data is you can calculate downforce at specific locations from no arrow to arrow. The best place we found to do that is actually at the end of the straight, which is over here with the actual how the car is located. So since we know all the ride heights, like the front left, front right, rear left, rear right, we can actually set the car up in CFD exactly like that at the specific speed and calculate and correlate the downforce numbers. We're also looking at, you can look at average downforce added throughout the actual lap, which that's in our blog, so you can look at that. Okay, this bottom section is the reference. So the orange line is with arrow, obviously, and that because that's our fastest lap, it's going to be just straight across. The blue line is with no arrow. And where you see it increasing, this is areas where time is slower on the track for the specific location. So this helps you kind of visualize where the next lap or the parts are really gaining you extra time. At the beginning of the lap, part of it's the straightaway, up to like right here is a straightaway, and you can kind of see they're basically about even going across, which means that we're not adding a whole lot of drag or anything like that. Coming into the first corner, you're not really gaining anything yet either. And then after that, you can really start seeing where we're gaining. So right here is a little bit, and then bam, right here, you can actually see it steps up quite a bit, and we just gain all the way through here. So a big section of the middle of the track, we're gaining a lot in aero, and that's because of the downforce. And it kind of levels off right here. We've seen this on another car also, in similar locations with aero. So aero definitely strategically helps in certain areas of this track and not as much in other areas. So looking at throttle, this is another interesting one. So again, orange is with aero. You can see, especially in the areas where we're gaining, it's a lot more noticeable on the graph. So you can see he is on throttle a lot more of the time than before. So especially like right here is a primary example. So he's on throttle earlier. So he gets on throttle earlier, and you can see that from the peak. And then he stays on throttle longer. And you can see that again on the next corner. You kind of see it here. It's a little harder to tell. It's not as noticeable. This is also where it's leveling off, which makes sense. And then once it starts increasing again, you can kind of see it. This one's a little harder to tell because you still do have the dip. So he gets off throttle earlier right here, but gets back on throttle. So these look pretty similar size. We could actually see how much of a difference that is. But you can see they end kind of at the same spot. So he's on throttle definitely longer overall. And going into the last corner, he's actually at full throttle. Comparatively, he was never at full throttle before. All right, so one cool thing in AIM that you can do is you can take the average of the ride heights, and then you can also do with some math calculations with known spring rates and everything like that, known motion ratios, you can calculate how much downforce you're actually creating. So that's kind of a cool thing. So compared to aero to no aero, we made an average of about 230 pounds of downforce overall throughout the track on average. We also tested out other wings and other things like that. So we were able to get average downforce around the track. You can also calculate peak downforces in different areas. Again, the data is only so good because you have a lot of data coming in to actually read. It's kind of bumpy. It's not fully smooth. The car's moving for a lot of reasons besides just aero, so it's hard to fully decipher all of the data. However, we did get a peak at the end of the straightaway of around 328 pounds.